My name is Nick. I'm an archaeologist and adventure traveler. Since I was a kid, history has always fascinated me, and learning that so many secrets are undiscovered, even in my own backyard, presented an opportunity to learn more. Join me as I put my amateur archaeology skills to use by traveling my county and exploring all it has to offer. Following up from my last video, I mentioned that the trees surrounding the area of the mounds were not old enough to support any archaeological record. However, reviewing some of the footage, I discovered this absolute monstrosity of a tree on the north side of the mounds and decided to make a return trip to attempt an estimation of its age. Dendrochronology, the study of tree age, has its place in the archaeological world, helping archaeologists date sites such as these mounds without damaging any artifacts. As I support totally non-destructive methods of identifying sites, there is another way that this tree dating can be done. A trick for estimating the age of a tree is simple. Take the circumference of a tree from a little below shoulder height, and then divide the circumference by pi, revealing the diameter and multiplying that by the growth factor, which is a numerical factor averaged by measuring many individual tree species diameters versus the number of actual growth rings from felled trees. From this, and knowing the tree species, we can get the approximate age of a tree. This method is not exact, but it is a relative estimate while taking into consideration the health and location of the tree. As there are no leaves this time of year, we can identify this tree species by not only the thick bark, which protects this species from field fires, but also the dead catkins hanging from the branches, which when in bloom give the appearance of cotton, making this species the eastern cottonwood tree. With an enormous 11-foot circumference, and given this tree's close proximity to the Scioto River, I can make a rough estimation of this giant's age at 80 years old, give or take a decade. As the cottonwood species grows rather quickly, it's not quite as old as I would have hoped, but it is certainly the oldest tree in this immediate area surrounding the mounds. However, unfortunately not old enough to give us any clues about this site. So, I've discovered on the map an area around here somewhere that doesn't fit with any of the legends of the local enclosures, cemeteries, or burial grounds. It's also not a mound or a petroglyph, so I'm not exactly sure what this marking on the map means. So I'm walking there now to figure out. I'm gonna have to cross this river. Having now crossed the Scioto River, which is very cold, I am now about half a mile from the site that doesn't have any particular marking. This map only depicts this site in a general location. I will have to explore the riverbanks a bit to discover its true location. Fortunately, this area is well worn from animal travel, so following in their steps, I should be able to traverse the banks without too much obstruction. In many respects, this riverbank here seems the same as any other riverbank. And so far no markings or petroglyphs or effigies, although I will say these mounds are slightly unusual. This far north in Ohio you don't typically find uneven land, so usually a sign of something man-made. While exploring the riverbanks near a couple of potential mounds, I did come across a couple of stones that seem out of place. The ancient indigenous people would use stone markers such as carved stone or white quartz as burial markers. I cannot say with any certainty that this is a marker, but it does stick out from the surroundings. In this area, there are signs of human activity. However, it seems more of the modern kind. I believe I've discovered the site. You can tell by these abnormal mounds around that something was man-made here. There is also evidence of animal activity apparent by the mollusk shell dragged from the river. Now, I mentioned that the ancient indigenous people would use white quartz as a marker for their grave sites. And here we have white quartz. It could just be randomly placed, of course, but It is on top of this strange mound here that's almost circular. I'm going to continue to have a look around. So this area is very interesting. So far it's given me the white quartz, which was unexpected, and is usually the sign of a burial marker. So I don't know, maybe this site was intended to be the mounds? It's very interesting. Plus, if you look behind me, there's another very large mound over there. I'm not sure what's going on here. Upon searching this small stream before this larger mound here, I did discover, looks like a piece of shale. Looks like it was broken from something bigger. Risk of moving it, I wanted to determine if there's any tool marks, which from what I can see definitely looks like it's been chipped or worked in some fashion. This right here may be an artifact. As we come off of this mound here, we can see that the ground here is littered with little bits of shale, chert, maybe even little slivers of flint. I'm sure this little section of the river here is chock full of artifacts. In several areas, there are large boulders jutting from the riverbank, obvious signs of major erosion. This area has almost telltale signs of human mound construction. Completely worked landscape. Found another small trinket here. Does seem out of place from the river. So I've crossed the river, and I'm now on the other side of where I found the white quartz and the piece of shale, the worked shale, which I'm now positive that that site over there is a burial site. I think that must be what the marking on the map means, even though it doesn't correspond with the map legend. So I didn't find any archaeological record here on this side of the river, which would be, I think, the south side. But I've wandered out into a field now, so I will step back, cross the river again, back to where I found the white quartz and shale, and I'll give that area another look because there's clearly something there. Rejoining the north side of the stream, with the white quartz and shaped shale, this stone, I believe, details obvious signs of being worked in some fashion. As it is impossible to tell the actual size of the stone without excavating it, the point of the stone seems unusual for any random stone jutting out of the ground based on its location atop these mound structures. I can conclude that this stone may be a marker for a burial. I thought I would test the compass against the front point of the stone, and sure enough, it aligns magnetic north, give or take a few degrees. If I'm correct, there should be a burial directly ahead. So, following directly north, which is right behind me where the stone was, and just a little to the east, the white quartz, dropping down into the riverbank, there is this small rounded stone. Of course, it could be just a river pebble, but it does seem strangely worked in some way. For example, This area here is chipped away, but it is quite round. There are a couple of these large stones, thinking perhaps the burial may be directly right behind this area here that the river has washed out, or maybe the burial has already been washed out. Unfortunately, I think this site is in imminent danger of being destroyed. I think we can fairly well determine that this was an ancient site, a burial of some sort. How many? Who? I have no idea. Unfortunately, I think this site is slowly being destroyed by the river. So I think with the discovery of the mounds here, the worked shale, the rounded stone, and the white quartz, and the stone marker that faces north, I think we've made a pretty decent discovery here. Of course, can't know conclusively until we find a body, but I believe directly under that mound there, about to be imminently washed into the river, is a body of some person. Maybe several people. But to try to put an age on it, I'm unsure. Crossing through here as carefully as possible. Don't want to slip into the river here. It does appear these banks are growing, and I would have to expect that's because of more and more runoff from the farmlands, making this river larger. More water than this river is used to. I'm not sure if this is the work of wildlife or human activity, but this area has been deforested a little. Unfortunately, I think everything I found in the riverbed will probably be washed away by the next time I'm here. Along with that piece of shale, that was a really good find. Hopefully I got it well documented enough here. This area has remained fairly protected by a large number of these very thorny trees here. Hazardous river crossings complete. Somehow it's not as cold the second time. Alright, walking back now. I think I made some pretty significant discoveries today, and I thank you for joining me.